Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Pat Cochran. Excuse me. I'm currently the supervisor for MCPS Transition Services. I'm very excited to be here, and I would like to welcome Melissa Teague, who is one of our phenomenal transition specialists with a wealth of experience working with students with a variety of disabilities, and her program coordinator position was actually with the Learning Center a few years ago. So we're excited to have her here as well. We are going to kind of talk through both the process and also some, just some things that we think are of interest as you are looking at the transition years. I was following the chat. It looks like most of you, 15, 16, seems to be the age of most of the parents, the student who has already graduated from MCPS. Fabulous to hear that your child is working full time. I love it. That is our goal, that college, all sorts of fun things. So we will proceed. Melissa, do you want to say hello? Introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for your kind words, Pat. It's great to be working with the Transition Services Team Unit. Pat is an amazing supervisor and has been great to work with. And I'm just happy to be part of this crew of awesome, amazing people. And I love that I get to participate on the tail end of the students' education. It's so fun to help plan and talk about what they want to do and just be part of that process. And I really enjoy it. When I went to school to become a teacher, this is really what I wanted to do. So I'm just really happy to be able to be doing exactly what I've wanted to do. So very excited to be here. So thank you all for the warm welcome that we've received today. So thank you.
And before we start, I just have a fun story to tell. And everyone in my family believes this is really the reason that my entire career has revolved around special education services. I grew up in a small town in northern New Jersey, not far from New York City. That's what Brooke and I were talking about. And everybody in the town knew each other. All of our teachers in our school lived in the community as well. And in my kindergarten class, my kindergarten teacher, her next door neighbor, had a child with Down syndrome. And this was long before, special education services and inclusion was required or was part of our educational systems. And she insisted that her neighbor's child be included in her kindergarten class, and I became her peer buddy for kindergarten, and then we spent first grade together and second and third and fourth grade, and in fifth grade she did move on to a self-contained setting, but we spent many years side by side, which I do believe that was part of my formation as a special educator, and especially just Down syndrome, and that whole experience is wonderful. Anyway, okay, so we are here tonight to talk about transition services. People hear about this. I would like us to be called secondary transition services because quite often people confuse us with PEP to kindergarten as opposed to secondary transition, which means high school to beyond high school years. But what is transition services? It is a coordinated set of activities designed for a child with an individualized education plan or an IEP. So this guide in the middle of this slide here is our transition services and graduation guide. It really is available. It should be available at all your IEP meetings. It's available on our website, our webpage, which I will open up and show you in a moment. But it also, it kind of gives you a guideline for what to expect, particularly in high school regarding transition services and what the processes look like when you go from entitlement services to those eligibility-based services. So I am going to open up our webpage here. Just want to make sure. Can you see that? And we're not psychological services. For some reason, that ended up on our webpage today. Not sure why. Can you see this transition services page?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so open up MCPS, go to Transition Services in the search line, and this is us. This comes up. We are working on this. This is a work in progress this year where we are trying to really focus on the important information that students, families, and community members need regarding transition services. So it talks a little bit about us. It also lists all the different special education services that are available. But the important pieces I wanted to point out at the top, we now put all of our upcoming events. The big one we have coming up is on April 24th. we are going to have our tips or transition information for parents and students meetings. We have a series of them throughout the year. This one will be on DOORS, Division of Rehab Services, and both their pre-employment transition services, which are high school-based services, and the student employment services, which are post-high school-based services. And then we're also bringing in Social Security, really focusing on that SSI piece because it's so integral to this whole process of transition. And then there will be others as we have other opportunities. We're kind of winding down for the year, but this is where you could find anything that is coming up in MCPS. And then our staff directories are over here. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then down below, these tiles, you can just click on. Everything is linked. We talk about the transition process. We talk about college and career readiness, our tips meetings. All of that information is here. Any of the transitioning youth information, that timeline, what it looks like between the time a student turns 14 and it moves on to DDA eligibility services or other services at 21, links to Maryland resources, a bunch of different things. And then some of our typical individual programs are put here, and then our summer opportunities. And I will tell you, this right now is a work in progress. We are not quite up to date with that at the moment. Okay, I am going to use bar. Oops. Okay. And now, Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. So one of the things that is a key point no problem.
There we go.
About transition services is that they begin when a student turns 14. So when your child turns 14, a TST or a transition specialist will be officially a part of the IEP team. And so they are going to be responsible for the transition section of the transition pages or the section of the IEP. And so that is where we take data from the students' educational levels, assessment information, and that is where we create the plan, the transition plan, where services will be, it's the guide for how we provide the services for our students. So every year our students complete what's called a transition interview. And so we ask them what their interests are, what they would like to do when they leave high school. And based on what they share with us, we create goals that align with their interests and their plans for after high school. We also incorporate activities that also support the post-secondary goals. So it's like a all-encompassing plan related to transition. And it is something that we update every year. And I tell my ninth grade families, I'm going to become your best friend between now and the time that your young adult transitions, because we're going to be having a lot of conversations. I'm going to be at the meeting every year. Get used to seeing my face, hearing my voice. But it is a plan that we put together. And it's an actual part of the IEP. So it's now I know in the elementary school, we skip those pages, but once they turn 14 and the transition specialist gets on board as the IEP team member, we really start working on those sections of the IEP, implementing activities and looking at post-secondary goals, talking about career plans, and just kind of helping families understand what their role is in transition services, and then kind of what the supports we're able to provide and how we work together as a team. And so those pages are kind of what guides the work we all do together as a team to support the young adult, because they do turn into adults pretty quickly as we're working with them through high school to prepare for transitioning into wherever it is, I like to say wherever they land, because there's a lot of options. And so we're here to help provide information and support for parents and families in looking at the variety of options and helping connect families and students to the resources they need to be successful after they leave MCPS.
Okay, so this is just kind of a graphic to show the two options for graduating from MCPS. The top one, the center one here, is the Maryland High School Certificate of Program Completion. The one to the right is a Maryland High School Diploma. As you can see, they look very similar. That is intentional. And we are going to talk a little bit about what each one of those entails. Liz, I think you're up for this one.
Yes. So students who are earning a certificate of completion, they earn that certificate based on at least 4 or more years of instruction in a variety of topics. So We work on functional life skills curriculum. We work on work-based learning. So some of the students are able to get experience in different types of jobs or learning job skills. And we have in-school sites where they are able to practice a variety of job skills. We have community job sites. So that's part of the instruction that they receive. They also are able to receive community-based learning, where every week or so they go into the community and they work on accessing community resources, traveling safely in the community. They're also participating in the high school assessments, which are alternative version of the high school assessments. They're not necessarily doing the high level, intense testing, but there's an alternative version of the assessments that are given to students who are working towards a certificate of completion. There are also CTE programs that they're able to participate in, and there's electives that they're also able to participate in. But one of the main items or the main points of the certificate is that they are working on functional life skills, community-based learning, and work-based learning. Those are important components of a student's instruction who is working towards a certificate of completion.
Okay, and so for this one, and when we talk about the high school diploma, and Melissa's going to speak to this one, but I wanted to interject for a moment. When we're talking about a high school diploma, that is a little bit different in terms of what the requirements are. For a high school diploma, a student must earn 22 credits. There are many of you probably already know this, but they must have 4 in English. They must have 4 in math, or as many as their years in high school in math. They have to have 3 in history and 3 in science. So there are required credits to earn that an SDE diploma. In addition, they must pass the high school assessments, not only sit for them. Sometimes the past few years, a lot of people have been able to just sit for them without passing them due to COVID, but they're really moving back to students having to pass those high school assessments, and they must earn 75 hours of student service learning. Now, for our students on the alternative learning outcomes, the certificate option, those 75 hours are waived. They do not have to work on those, but if you're earning a diploma, then you must earn them. One of the areas that becomes more challenging, but it certainly is doable, that if a student is on the diploma track, it gets a little bit more challenging to incorporate all of those life skills, all of those functional skills, all of those community skills that go along with that functional life skills curriculum. So it becomes a little more challenging. There are different ways that we look at that. We may add another year so that they can gain some experience with that in an internship or with some travel training. But every student is taken individually because, again, it's that individualized education plan. Sorry, Melissa, to interject.
No, you're fine. No, and that's what I like about my working relationship with Pat is we like to tag team all the time. So it's perfect. In this slide, we're just sharing that transition is the planning process. It's continuous. Like I mentioned, we start at age 14 and we go all the way to age 21. So I say, we're going to be best friends. By the time your child transitions, you're going to be having a lot of contact with me. But it is a continuous process. It's not a one-time event. We check in, we circle back with the families regularly, which leads me to the second point, that it is a very collaborative process. The parents are essential in this conversation. There are a variety of things to-do items, as I call them, that are to be completed throughout the process. So I work with parents closely. We work with them to make sure we're staying on top of our to-do items. And then, of course, the main thing is that the student is the key decision maker. So we really encourage the students to be involved in telling us what it is that they're interested in doing. We encourage them to come to IEP meetings and all of that. So it's definitely a continuous process, and everyone is important. All of the members on the team are important, and we encourage collaboration on every level all through the process. So hopefully I didn't miss anything. My videos are kind of covering. Okay, so I think I got everything. All right, and so the key players, there are a lot of people involved in the transition process. So the transition support teacher or the transition specialist serves as I like to call it like a networker or a connector, where we kind of help kind of connect all of the people involved, all of the players. We kind of help connect everyone together, make sure that everyone is doing their part. The case manager, of course, is the one who creates the IEP. We work with the IEP along with the case manager. There's adult service providers involved, coordinator of community services. That's the person that helps if a student is found eligible for DDA. They're the ones that help work with the parents, and we also communicate with them as well. So there's a lot of communication across the board amongst all of these players. And so one of the things that I like about this position is that we're kind of like that person that makes sure everyone stays in contact, we're communicating, everything is getting done that needs to get done. And so there are a lot of people involved in the transition process. And if there's ever any questions about, okay, who is this person, or who am I supposed to be talking to about this, you can always reach out to your transition specialist or teacher, and they can help guide you to who you need to speak to or connect you to whoever could be helpful for whatever question you might have. So a lot of people. So in Montgomery County public schools, every high school has a transition support teacher. So every building, there's going to be a TST in the building who is going to have a hand or a part in the creation of the transition pages of the IEP. And the nice thing we have is that we have a little directory here with all of the high schools listed, all of the teachers, the transition support teachers. If you click on their names, I believe those are links to their emails.
Yes.
So if you need you need to find somebody quickly, you can go to this directory that is on our webpage, and you can find all of the transition support teachers in the county, as well as the transition specialists. We have our TSU directory is also available online with all of our names, and the TSU staff, the transition specialists, we work directly under Pat, who is our supervisor, and we support a variety of transition support teachers in the county as well. So we're all a huge team working together to ensure the success of our students.
Absolutely. And that's available right on our webpage. Okay. So when we talk about our work-based learning, it comes in a variety of opportunities and fashions. So these are just some photos of some of our young people out working and riding on the ride-on, because that's something else we do is travel training. So our work-based experiences can either start in the school building, which they typically do. For our 9th, 10th graders, they may start, doing something, working in a media center. And it would be typically a small group of students working with a job coach or a paraeducator. And they would start there and then eventually move out to the community and have a variety of community-based experiences. And the intent here is really to expose students to different opportunities and helping them kind of discern what it is that they enjoy doing, what it is they want to do, as well as develop those work skills, those interpersonal skills needed for work. So this is one large component of our work-based program. A couple of things that we also provide. We provide mini grants to the schools so that they can develop in-school work our businesses. We have everything from soaperies to cookie businesses to popcorn businesses to, balloon businesses, stationery businesses. And what's really fun about those is that they are student run. The students get to, work on everything that's involved with that, including advertisement within the school, including the budgeting and working with the money and the sales piece to it all. So those are very popular with our schools. Last year, we got 33 applications for 17 spots that we were able to provide for those grants that we provide the schools. So in addition to our work-based community experiences, we also provide travel training or travel exposure. We have a very scripted travel training program within MCPS. It is scripted because safety for our students is our number one priority. And that very scripted program is going from A to B, B to A. That is how we travel train, to get from one setting to another and then back again. And every step of the way, we are monitoring and assessing students' progress. And they don't complete until they have mastered that ability and they are safe traveling. Travel exposure is probably more typical and more common. This is something that we encourage all of our high school services to provide students is when you are going in the community, take a ride on our Metro bus. When you are going to a work site, maybe take the school bus there, but take the ride on our Metro bus back. Really exposing our students to being out in the community and riding public transportation, getting comfortable with it, and mostly how to stay safe in those settings. In addition, we provide community exposure and access through a variety of resources. We, in transition services, are able to provide Montgomery College Challenge classes. Students have to be older, so this is as that 18 to 21 age group, but it's a way for us to again get our students out into the community. This is something you could do as an adult. We tend to send small groups of 3 or 4 students together. They may take public transportation and take that class together. Most of them, it's a great experience. They really enjoy it. They enjoy being on the college campus, and it really does inspire students to continue taking those classes after they graduate from MCPS. Another big part of what we work on is Metro access. And many of our students are not able to take public transportation, or sometimes parents just don't feel that it's safe. So we support parents as they work through the Metro Access application process. For those of you who don't know Metro Access, it is a pickup and drop off door-to-door service available through Metro. Okay, career and tech ed options. This is exciting to me because this is kind of where we're headed, and this is where MCPS under the blueprint. So if you've heard of the MSDE blueprint, it really is about preparing our students and making them college and career ready. And that is for all of our students across the spectrum. So our CTE options, and Brooke talks about one at Seneca with her own daughter. She's already involved in the child development program there, class there. And that is something, CTE options or career tech ed options typically run over the course of 2, 3, or sometimes more, 4 years. Child development would be when you'd start a little bit younger. It's typically in your students' school, wherever they are in school, because many of our schools, high schools, have them, and we can kind of slow that down and work it out over several years to develop those skills, which is really nice. And typically we might have 2 or 3 students with a paraeducator supporting them. Depending upon the student's ability, they may be able to participate in all of the options, and some they may not be able to participate in. And think about the Fire Training Academy. The Fire Training Academy has very set standards for assessments without accommodations. So they don't provide any accommodations. They don't allow any accommodations. So that's always an area where we think outside the box a little bit. So if your child is interested in, firefighting or EMT work, how can we work around this? Once they get involved with that, there is a certain point where you can't continue without passing those assessments. So we want to, maybe find another similar pathway that they might be able to take. We have many students who participate in programs at Thomas Edison High School of Technology. I encourage you to go and see it during their open houses. They have several of them in the fall. Those tend to be 1 to 2 year programs. We can kind of stretch those out a little bit if needed. They have a variety of opportunities. And, students, it doesn't matter. Students can be either diploma bound or certificate bound. However, the school does not send. So the sending school. So if your child goes to Albert Einstein, Einstein does not necessarily send a paraeducator to support their students. That is done by the Edison staff. So there's a little bit of a change there. And that's why you might want to wait until your child was older so that they could be more amenable to working in a very different environment. But there are lots of opportunities. Every high school has CTE opportunities. It might be culinary arts. It might be something in computer technology. It might be automotive technology. It might be cosmetology. And we have students in all of these. We in special education have all students in all of these programs. So those are opportunities to consider for your child as they grow. Okay, and then we have work-based learning, and this is another really exciting one for me, for us in general. And the growth of work-based learning really comes out of the MSDE blueprint, which again focuses on that complete. What does this high school experience say? What are we preparing students for? MCPS has really committed itself to developing their apprenticeship programs, their internship programs, their CTE internships, so not only the CTE classroom work, but providing internships for those, and also site-based work experiences. We also, under the umbrella of the apprenticeship, there's a youth apprenticeship program. Youth apprenticeship takes place while a student is in high school. I will tell you, in transition services, we have a young man who is in our TTI, or Transition Training for Independence program in Rockville. He went through the youth apprenticeship program last year, and now in his final year with us, he's fully employed by MCPS, which is really exciting because we know that when he leaves in June, he will have a job with benefits and a job he can continue with once he graduates. We have 2 students who have gone through the youth apprenticeship into cafeteria work. And again, when they exit in June, they also will leave with an MCPS position and those benefits that come along with being an MCPS employee. So we're really excited that this is growing. It's slow, but we are growing it. When we talk about internships, again, there are many opportunities for internships. We in Transition Services have what is called Exploring Careers internship. It really, again, is for that 4th, 5th year student, but we provide support in travel training the student to the internship and then support them on the internship for however many days and hours, during the course of the year that they work. And again, this is specifically for students with IEPs across the spectrum. They have to have some level of independence, absolutely. They have to be able to travel independently using public transportation. We don't provide a yellow bus to or from, but we work with them to get there. And then they have to be able to display their ability to work in this setting. Our settings are Kaiser. We have a very large program, both at Kaiser Permanente and Adventist Healthcare. Those are our 2 larger ones. We're looking to expand that. So that is, a nice option that we have for students. And again, those CTE internships and site-based work experiences that we have spoken about. Okay, we're going to move on to this one. So we're asked to speak a little bit about our career and community and career connections opportunity and our transition training for independence opportunity. These are 2 18 to 21-year-old programs, offerings through Transition Services. All of them have 3 classrooms. So we have 3 CCC and 3 TTI classrooms. We have 1 up county for each. We have 1 mid county for each, and then we have 1 down county for each. We really want this experience to be available to as many students as possible. Our CCC students the classrooms have 12 students and they have 3 staff in those classrooms. So each classroom has a teacher and 2 paraeducators, very highly staffed because it is career and community. So it is almost exclusively in the community. They get to class. They might do a little bit of morning work, and then they're out going to work sites. They're out going into the community to do a variety of independent living activities during the course of the day. They may go as a group. They may, spread out and do it in 3s. When they go out to their work sites, they certainly, split that up into smaller groups. Students, when they come into this program, they have to have some travel training, but we really focus on that piece during this class time. Students start traveling with an adult, one of the staff in the program, and other students. At this point in the school year, the students are independent. They leave the classroom, they get to the bus stop, they get on the bus, they get to their work site or where they're going in the community, the staff meet them there. And the same thing happens on the return trip. We actually have some students at this point who are also leaving their work site and going home, or coming from home to the work site. It really is about training them to be independent. And then our transition training for independence is really for those students who are very independent. There is no yellow bus to and from. They must get there independently, and that does not mean mom or dad drives them there. It means that they take public transportation to get to the college campus. These particular classrooms are housed at Montgomery College, both in Germantown, Rockville, and Silver Spring. And these students, there are 10 students, one teacher, one paraeducator, but they're very independent. They might come in with a job, so they'll spend a couple of hours in the morning doing functional life skills, but really looking at banking. They're looking at paychecks. They're looking at moving around the community, in a variety of different ways. And then they're going to work, or they're going to take a class, a non-credit challenge class, or another class of interest at MC, or they're going to a volunteer site with the plan that may ultimately end up as a job. So these are on our website. I can open up the link here, but I don't think I need to do that. It really just explains them in more detail. What is really important to know about these are LO. So these are very specifically for our students on the alternative learning outcomes pathway, not the diploma pathway. There are reasons for that. That is the nature of the program. That's how they have been designed. And those are the students that are accepted into this. So it is not, again, not for a diploma-bound student, but for our certificate or ALO students. Okay, I think, Melissa, you are up now. Oh, no, this is me too. Okay, so we talked about, so this is the other big piece of transition services. We really help families navigate this big, huge, cumbersome, what happens when my child graduates from high school? And that whole movement from entitlement to eligibility. Entitlement is those school-based services. Every child is entitled to a free, appropriate education in the least restrictive environment possible. Okay, so that's entitlement. And along with that might come speech and physical therapy and occupational therapy, or, some or all of those. Transition services. But what happens is once your child graduates, and I'm sure most of you know this, that changes and the law changes. So IDEA, which covers school law, changes. And now as an adult, an individual is covered under ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. Those are eligibility-based services. So everything must be applied for. This goes from applying for college accommodations in a college setting, so applying for support services in college, applying for accommodations on the job, applying for services such as DDA, Developmental Disability Administration, DOORS, Division of Rehab Services, SSI, Supplemental Security Income. All of these are eligibility-based services. This is a very large part of what we in transition services do, is really to ensure that as students move through the process and they exit MCPS in June, that within the next few months, they have a plan of action. They have the supports and services in place that they need. And we kind of assist you through that process. Whoops, go back. Okay. And this one is, our pretty typical one for students with Down syndrome is to assist families in applying for these services. If your child is 15, 16 or older, I suspect you may have already applied for DDA. If you have not, I encourage you to reach out to your TST, your transition support teacher, and ask for assistance in applying to DDA. It is an application, pretty basic, but there are some questions there that you may want some assistance in how to answer those questions. The important things to know about DDA, you must remember they're eligibility based. So you must supply the documentation when you are applying for your child. There are a couple of factors here. A student must have a social security number. They don't accept the application. They have to have a social security number. The second one is they're looking for the student's most recent IEP, and they're looking for the neuropsych assessment that states the cognitive levels. Now, I know a lot of parents aren't happy about that. That's not us saying that's what is needed. That is what DDA is saying what is needed. The importance to this is that these supports that DDA can provide are lifelong. So it can be employment, it can be day services, it could be community services, it can be a mix of the above, it can be residential services, ultimately it can be respite services. So it is a really important consideration for you and your child.
I think that's me.
Yes, I
All
think
right.
so.
So there is a timeline that the transitioning youth follow, and those are for the students who are remaining in school until age 21. We call them transitioning youth, and they have different years attached to their late, like if it's a TY 25, that means that young adult is transitioning in 2025. And so whatever year your child will be transitioning, if they're a transitioning youth, they will be in the list that we create of the TY 26, 27. I think some of them we're looking at 29s now. I'm working with some 29 families now. So we do have that information. We're able to determine the exit dates early so we'll know how long we have to work with the families and kind of plan and prepare. Again, like I mentioned, this is a student-centered process that begins once the student turns 14, and we are supporting, again, like Pat mentioned, a movement from entitlement, school-based services to eligibility services. So we're working with families on preparing and applying for post-secondary supports. We assist. So one of the things that I do as a transition specialist is I sometimes will set up meetings with my families to help them complete the DDA application. Like Pat mentioned, if you haven't done that yet, you are more than welcome to reach out to your transition support teacher. They can sit down with you if you give them permission there's a confidential information form that we ask all parents to sign. And once that is signed, we are able to provide DDA with the documentation that they're requesting for that application process as well. So that's one of the things that in our role as transition support teachers, we can do that as well. And like I mentioned earlier, we also work with a variety of agencies, and we collaborate with each other, and we collaborate with the parents and the families. We also work on keeping parents highly involved, and we also provide our transition information meetings, like Pat mentioned, our tips meetings. That's another part of the transitioning timeline, is that we also provide that information in a timely manner. And the main goal is, this is an outcome-oriented process. So our main goal is for students to leave school with a plan in place. And I'm so happy. I can't remember which parent it was. And like Pat had referenced earlier, it was so nice to see a parent who's here, whose child has gone through the process, and they said their child is doing well. And so that's an example of how transition services, that's a great example of how we work in the system with families and with parents and students to ensure that there is a successful transition from high school. Like I said, wherever they land, we want to make sure that it's a successful landing. It's a successful transition for them. So thank you, parent. I can't remember which one you were, but thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that's every once in a while we need to hear those success stories as well. That encourages us in the work that we're doing. So thank you, Mom. I can't remember, but thank you, whichever one you were. Thank you so much.
And before we move on, this Appendix A is actually linked, so you should be able to open that so that you can kind of walk through it. We've just kind of broken down the steps that you will need to be taking in this transitioning youth process. Okay, Melissa, we're going to talk a little bit about doors.
Sure. So one of the agencies that we work with,
I'm sorry, I've lost my link here. I want to open this link.
No worries. So one of the agencies that we work with connecting families and students with is DOORS, the Division of Rehabilitative Services. And they provide supports for individuals who are looking to get a job. So they provide supports in helping prepare individuals for jobs, getting jobs, and maintaining the jobs, keeping the jobs. So there are a couple of umbrellas, as I call them, to the Division of Rehabilitative Services. One is the vocational rehabilitative section, which works with individuals who have already transitioned from high school or are transitioning. And then we have a nice section, and the umbrella that we work with closely is the pre-employment transition services, which is the services, as Pat mentioned earlier, that are provided to students in high school. And so there are what they do in those programs is they'll work with students in career and kind of looking at career counseling, job skills training. There might be some programs available that they can suggest and connect your young adult with to say, hey, if your child is interested in this, we have a program that supports them in learning skills related to whatever it is they might be interested in. And so that is a conversation that I do have with my parents at IEP meetings. I mentioned this program and I let them know that this is a resource that's available for their young adult while they're in high school. And a lot of parents have taken advantage of this resource, but it is something that is available. And I'm just kind of looking here just to make sure I covered everything. Yes. And Pat, I think if you could expand on, because I know there's two sections of the student programs. There's the pre-EDS and then there's the student employment services.
Yes.
And you had mentioned, there it is. Okay. Because I was looking at it in the presentation at the same time. So okay, so if you scroll down.
Right. So, and here it is. And I apologize. My screen wouldn't let me open it. The link. So here we go. This is the new and updated. And my understanding is they've finally come out with this in Spanish as well. The doors brochures that are out. So yes, Melissa, said it very clearly. There are two services that we look at. VR, they've actually just switched over to calling it student employment services, but that is after high school. But the pre-EDS is really exciting. That's those are the opportunities offered to high school students. That can be a Saturday option. It can be an internship. There are a lot of exciting things. They're a little bit slow coming out of COVID, but moving forward, they're really looking to partner with community partners and really start developing those programs back up again. So many of our students have been able to access those and gain work experience, career assessments, those types of things. They're also really important when your student exits because they partner with DDA and provide some job coaching supports. If any of you have heard of Project Search, they work with Project Search. They would pay for the job coaching. DDA would pay for the program itself. So, that's really their kind of funding sources, and they work nicely together to develop full programs for individuals.
Yes, and one of my programs that I support, there was an online program that was available for students where they would meet once a week and they would talk about topics like time management, when they go to school or they're on a job, what are some skills you need to have in place? And Doors was able to help connect the families with those programs by providing the funding for those programs. And so a lot of my students from one of my schools have been participating in that program this semester, and I've gotten some really great feedback from that. And just a little tip, if you do go the Doors route, just make sure you're on top of the communication, because sometimes they'll send you like a deadline and you want to make sure you meet. If they're asking for information, make sure you follow those timelines, because it is a short, tight timeline sometimes, and you don't want to miss the window and have to start the process over. So just like a little tip that I do give my families is any correspondence from them or any information from them, keep it in the forefront of your mind and stay on top of timelines. But once you get in and are able to access the supports that they provide, so far I've heard it's been a great experience for some of my families. So just a little tip.
And how do you apply to Doors? It's a referral process. It's an online referral process that is noted in this brochure, but the easiest way to do that is, again, to reach out to the TST in your building who does this for multiple students over the course of the year. You have to sign a consent form, that 336-32, that by the time your child is exited, you will have signed multiples of those. But we really need that. That's our consent to talk to anybody outside of MCPS. We just cannot do it without your permission. So you sign that, allow that referral to happen, and that's kind of the starting point. The challenge is, as Melissa said, they don't reach back out to the schools. They reach back out to the families individually. So you really need to be aware that that's how the communication works. All right, we're going to move on. SSI. So SSI is something that we also are very involved with. SSI is supplemental security income. Now, you probably know what this is at this point. Many children have it, but we really work with families in having their adult child apply for SSI once they turn 18. Why is it important? It is important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is monthly income for an individual with a disability who is not currently able to support themselves. In the future, they may not be needed, Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but we don't worry about that at this point because for right now, it is that kind of support. It can be used for a variety of things, classes at MC. It can be used for other community-based activities. It can be used for transportation, clothing, those kinds of things help pay some expenses that they have on a regular basis. So at 18, again, many children have it. If they have a child has SSI, it's based on both the disability and parent income. If once an individual turns 18, then it becomes income-based, disability-based, and we look at the income of an individual probably not making much or any at 18. So it is kind of the prime time. None of the parents' income is considered once a child turns 18 and becomes an adult. A couple things to remember about this. It is a process. It takes almost a year for this to take place. Do not call them the day before your child turns 18 because they'll put you through the child system and then deny that before they'll even start the adult system. It is a little bit cumbersome. It just requires a lot of documentation from that social security card to birth certificate to proof of address to IEP to psychological to any medical documentation. All of that you really want to share with them. But again, the transition support teacher can assist you with this. They can point you in the right direction. They can assist as much or as little as you need in completing this process. What's really important about this? If an individual earns $1 in supplemental security income, they are automatically eligible for Medicaid. Now you have to submit a one-page application for it, but they're eligible because they're receiving SSI. As we move forward to that 21, when a student then, flips over from MCPS to DDA, all of DDA's programs and activities are Medicaid waivers. So they bill Medicaid for all of it. So an individual has to have Medicaid to receive services from DDA. You can apply to DDA and be accepted without Medicaid. You won't get the services without Medicaid. And remember, it's SSI, not SSDI. SSDI, which makes more sense, you would think. Social Security disability income is really for individuals who have worked long enough and have become disabled, but they've worked their quarters that were necessary and they're receiving that income, or for an individual, a child whose parent is deceased or disabled. But for an individual looking for that income that comes from Social Security and the Medicaid, it would be SSI. Okay, Melissa, this is you.
All right. So one of the resources that the Transition Services Unit provides to our parents is what we called, I think we mentioned it earlier, the Transition Information for Parent and Student Meetings. We call them TIPS for short. And those are meetings that we host throughout the year, every year, regarding a variety of transition-related topics. And I really encourage, especially like my freshman, ninth grade parents, to really start attending these meetings and attend them every year if you can. And I know it sounds repetitive, but honestly, it's just a really good way to front load a lot of this information so that you're familiar with it. By the time it's time for your young adult to transition, you've had a good kind of exposure to the information. And so we have some of the topics we cover: adult services in October, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
That might be one of our biggest,
yes,
most well-attended meetings. I remember when I attended one of them and I left with a pile of resources and information. Different adult service providers attend, representatives from DDA will be there to answer questions. So I like to encourage parents to really utilize these resources because they will come very handy in the future when it's time to start making decisions and making movement. You'll have a good understanding of what some of those topics and to-do items. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of to-do items that will need to be done. This is a good way of kind of wrapping your head around what the whole process looks like. We have a meetings usually in December about college night, where we talk about a variety of college-related options for our students. Usually in February, we have our date already for next year. We talk about guardianship and supported decision making. That is a big one, especially for our families with students who are on the ALO track. A lot of parents do look into retaining guardianship. And so this is a great and very informative meeting. And every one of these meetings, we do have handouts. So on the next slide, I will share with you how you're able to access that information. But then we also have in February a financial planning meeting. The one we have coming up next week is our Doors Night. I believe it's Doors and Social Security. Yes, SSI. So that one that meeting will have presenters coming from those agencies to talk about what door services look like, just a very informative meeting. And then we also have our MCPS Special Education Resource Fair. We had that just a couple Sundays ago. It's usually on a Sunday. And I know I was there, and it's just a chance for you to come and just get a lot of information and resources regarding special education, transition. You can speak to people directly. And then we also have the Transitioning Youth Fair. So for this May, we're going to be meeting with our TY25 families, where we're going to be checking in with them and just kind of, letting them know this is where you should be in the transition process, and just kind of making sure everybody is on track for their child to transition. So just want to encourage you all, if you can, please attend these meetings. We do record some of them as well. Some of them are online. And I think on the next slide, I think it's our resource slide, you can actually access the recordings. There we go. You can access, if you click on the transition services page, you can access the recordings, the handouts. I encourage families to utilize and access those resources as much as you need to. Also, we have MCPS graduation requirement. All of these titles on this slide are linked, so you'll be able to click on the English and Spanish graduation requirement website, the Student Services Learning Hours page, and then the last one that I really am excited about is the Montgomery County Disability Network, and that is a great resource of resources. I mean, there's resources on every topic you can think of: housing, healthcare. There's names of committees and groups that you can join, additional committees. There's housing support. I think I said that already, but there's just tons of resources there. There we go. And if you scroll down, you'll see all of these links: financial supports, vision supports, food support. So just a great resource. Camps. Yep, I saw that. Summer and day camps. And so just want to make sure that we also provide these resources to you as well. It's a lot. And if you are looking at something and you have questions, like Pat said, you can always reach out to the TST, and we're always more than happy to help answer any questions you might have and connect you to any resources that we know could be helpful for you and your family. So those are our resources that we wanted to share with you all.
And I will say that I'm really excited. Our transitioning fair in May really is targeted to our students and families of students who are exiting next year. So our TY25s only, nobody else is invited to it. But we are having kind of a precursor to that with Lisa Lorraine, who has a very large presence in the Hispanic community. And so the week prior to our TY fair, I'll be working with her and her families to kind of prepare them for that meeting. So I'm really excited about that. That's kind of a new undertaking this year, which I hope will become regular ones. So I am going to stop sharing here because we are pretty much done with our presentation. Let's see if I can figure out how to stop sharing. I'll do that.
It should be the green share button at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, it says new share. I just want to stop. Nope, I don't want to do that. I want to stop sharing.
Do you want me to do it for you?
Yes, please. That'd be great.
I'm just going to end up sharing for a second, and then I will stop share. There we go.
There we go. Perfect. Okay, that's it.
Is it okay if I go through
sure.
A few minutes? Because I know that there were questions earlier.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't see. Ooh, a lot of them. Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of chit chatting too. And I was sharing a lot of your resources, just the links as you were talking. Thank you so much. I just want to say that was fabulous. And it was so nice to hear all of that in one place in such an organized fashion. So we've already answered what CTE means. It's the career
technology education. Yes. And that, we are so acronym heavy in in Montgomery County Public Schools. And we're so acronym heavy in transition, even more so. You will find out that there's an acronym for everything. And so we tried really hard to spell it out. That is one CTE that kind of rolls off MCPS's tongue at this point, because Everyone's talking CT, WBL, work-based learning. Those are just blah, blah, blah. We just, it's just very typical. So you will hear that terminology. Now you know what it is.
Thank you. Here's a question. Is the high school certificate of program completion, not the diploma? You mentioned there's an alternative version of high school assessments. Do students need to pass this high school or this assessment in order to receive the high school certificate of program completion? So I think that what that's asking, we have all these HSAs or the high school assessments to get the diploma. Is there some kind of assessment that has to be passed to receive the certificate?
That is a great question. And actually moving forward, I will make sure that we clarify that a little bit more. So every student certificate working towards a certificate must take the alternative assessment if they have not taken the high school assessments. They do not have to pass it. They get a score for it. That is it. It happens once. It is a fairly lengthy process, I think during 11th grade, unless that's changed. And that it's kind of a one and done, but every student, ALO student alternative learning outcomes, must participate in that to earn their certificate. Yes. Not pass, just participate.
Right.
Is that just for data, or since they don't have to pass them? Just curious as to.
Yes, I believe it is really for data and, looking at different markers. I will say, and it's kind of exciting, and this is, some of you may have heard, a little bit about this. Moving forward, MSDE, Maryland State Department of Education, is looking at adding endorsements to the certificate in a variety of areas: independent living, employment, community. There are a bunch of different ones that they're looking at. We are not sure yet what that looks like because we've been hearing about it a lot and it's kind of in the works. I think they might pilot it in a couple of districts, certainly not ours. They're not going to pick the largest district to pilot that in. But I suspect that within a few years, we will see that and be kind of cool. So when a student earns their certificate, they can also earn an endorsement in one or more of those areas. And it really just talks about the skills, which I think is a little more applicable than taking an assessment for data, right? What are the skills that student is leaving with?
Thank you. And then let's see, do all these services apply if student has a private placement?
So private placement, it depends. Most private placement placed by MCPS, they have their own transition team. So the transition individual at the school would be responsible for working with the family through this process. That being said, parents are always welcome to come to our TIPS meetings. Parents should be applying for DDA doors as well. If with that transition person, they should be guiding that process. I don't know how involved. It would really depend upon the school, how involved they would be in that process, but that is something you certainly should be asking for.
Thank you. Let's see. So here's a follow-up question to the testing for the alternative learning, the alternative assessments versus the HSAs. High school assessments. Let me get back down there. Is the score from the alternative assessment something that can be or should be shared for the DDA application?
No. It's an MSDE thing that it's required that it was taken.
So I have a question. So how do students who are on alternative learning outcomes and included in a general education setting in high school, how are they set up for success in the transition, like for transition instruction? If there, because we have several students who don't take classes in the LFI classes or classrooms or in the, they are out in the general education setting on alternative learning outcomes. How then can we set those students up for like the TTI or the CCC programs when they're not receiving some of the travel training that those students are getting, but they're getting a ton of independent training by being out in the general education setting?
Right. And so that, it is an application process for those two programs. It is not a given. There are a lot of parents who assume that, my child wants it. So, we can get in. We only have so many spots. We only have 60 spots, and it's a very popular program at this point. So, there are things that you can do. If your student is an ALO student and you want to refer that student to DTI or CCC, you can do that. Now go through the transition support teacher in your building, but work work with them to talk about how they can earn those skills. And I will say, by the time a student is in there, we're talking about students in their last 2 years of eligibility. So that 19 to 21 is typically when we see our CCC and TTI students. They're not even eligible prior to 18. They have to be 18 to get into those programs. And so at that point, by the time your student's in their 5th or 6th year, even if they're fully included, if they're doing one of the career tech programs, you want to be looking at an internship anyway. Do you want them fully included in the same English classes when they're 20 as they were when they're 14? You want to move along that spectrum with your child so that they are growing and becoming more independent, not only in that coursework, but also in their opportunities, both in school and outside of school. It may be a part-time job. It may be, a volunteer job. It may be that internship that aligns with that CTE program that they're doing. So you really want to prepare them in that way. We've had students who have done 4 years and then they've gone and taken a year and really worked on those job skills and those travel skills, applied to exploring careers internship after doing that in their 4th year, maybe their 5th year, and then moving from there on to a CCC or TTI. So I think it requires creativity. It requires collaboration and really kind of thinking what is in the best interest moving forward for this individual student. And if it's staying in classwork, then maybe it's staying in the classwork. But I will say, if you're looking at like TERP Succeed, for instance, they're really looking for somebody who has some of that internship or work experience and somebody who knows how to navigate the community a little bit. So just, what are the outcomes? That would be my guidance. What are the outcomes? What is it that you want for your child once they are an adult? Yes, they may have these great experiences and have this CTE experience that leads to a nice job, but you got to make sure the other pieces are there as well. So that
really
I don't know if
helpful.
that answers the question.
Well, it does. It's kind of maps out a possible way for that to happen. Because I know that a lot of the families within our organization, our member families, want their kids or their students included in the general education setting, but they also don't want to miss out on some of the life skills that are taught in the LFI programs. And so that's actually a really interesting way of sharing the information. So I appreciate that.
At some point you can also think about the child can spend most of their day, and I've seen this many times, most of their day fully included, but maybe a class that's appropriate or that they're interested in, or will teach some of these skills with their LFI peers. That's always a consideration. I think our IEP teams are pretty flexible these days around, what an individual's program looks like, set of services looks like.
Thanks, Pat. We have another question here.
Sure.
How to make the decision of diploma versus certificate if the student could possibly go either way? Do you have a sense that one is better than the other in terms of supports and opportunities?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I was going to say that's a hard question.
That's a tough one.
Good one, but it's hard.
Yeah, and that's something I certainly can't answer that. I think that that's a team decision, and the student and the parent are at the center of that team, and you make that, I think it requires a lot of honesty and looking at what is best for the individual. We've seen plenty of both. So, I think, again, I would look at what are the outcomes? What is the expectation here? What do you want for your child? What does your child want? What are their expectations for this? Life changes after high school. And I think everyone needs to realize that high school is a lot of fun for a lot of people. And once everyone goes off to college and we're working every day, it changes. And that's for our children as well. So, always kind of keeping that in the back of your mind. What is it you're looking for? What are your outcomes here?
Thanks. So a question that came up for me is when you were talking about the different, like the CCC, the transition training for independence, or the TTI, and you were and not just those programs, but the other opportunities for internships and job training when students are in high school. I wonder if are all of the internships or jobs MCPS specifically approved jobs, or are there other opportunities? Like if a family has a connection at a local business that is open to having somebody work there, or there's a new relationship built, like within, like DSNMC has different partners in the county. And I know that some of those business hire, some of our numbers. And so I'm wondering, so that I guess I just wondered if they were job specific. So like, for example, if a student gets a job, when they're, 15 or 16, do they have to stop that job in order to do an MCPS internship or job?
So I think that if it was after school, no,
Okay.
no, it wouldn't have to. If it aligned with what they were, the goals were in school, then, it could potentially align with that. However, you have to remember staffing, right? So staffing is kind of an ongoing issue. What kind of supports are needed in that internship, in that job setting? And it's not guaranteed that a child is going to get that MCPS staffing to go to that internship and support them, or that job site and support them. So I think that's a big piece of it. Yeah.
If I missed any questions, or if somebody just wants to come off mute and raise their hands, we have a few more minutes. If anybody wants to just come off camera or unmute your mic, you're welcome to ask questions. There's some quiet, chatty people in here. I know some of these names.
There's a lot in the chat. I haven't read it all.
I know there is. I know, Heidi, thank you for all your comments. I know there was another one. Some are in here just thankful that there was Spanish translation. There's lots of comments. This has been an amazing.
I will say that we are working very hard to reach out to our multicultural community. We have interpreters for all of our TIPS meetings. We have interpreters for as many events as we host. We are building this collaboration with Lisa. We're building a couple other collaborations. We're working with the Special Education Family Support Office to also maybe host some coffees in local settings with interpreters so that we can work with families who may be uncomfortable, walking into a school and talking about this, so we can sit in a more intimate setting for this. So that's kind of our goal for next year, which really excites me.
I actually wrote a couple notes down to contact you because we have a Grupo Latino. Oh, yes. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm waiting for the interpreter.
Yes.
She said that she was interpreting, but I couldn't find the access.
Oh, Pat, we can't hear you. Oh, yeah, I hear you. Can you hear me? Yeah. I was just, yes, I'm waiting for Pat. Pat, did you hear the questions?
No, I did not.
Okay. Melissa, did you hear that question? Oh, why am I the only one hearing?
I think that you were in the interpretation, like you set it up, so you heard it. So Amelia, if you could just, or maybe Brooke, if you can.
Okay. So
Myra
Alvarado has a child with autism, and he's quite independent, and in his current situation seems like he's not I think that he's not progressing as well as she would like to see, and he's not being supported adequately, and it doesn't seem like the IEP is being followed. So that was just kind of putting everything in. She doesn't know what to do next. She feels
okay.
And doesn't
understand
what to do next.
So the first step would be to contact your child's case manager in the school. If you feel that you're not being heard, there is a process in MCPS that you can. First of all, I'd encourage you to reach out to the supervisor. So every few schools has a special education supervisor, and that person can assist you in the process, kind of your due process rights, right? To figure out what is right, what is wrong, how it needs to be fixed. So they're kind of your next channel. What I would suggest, if Ms. Alvarado can put her email address or contact information in the chat, and I can reach out to her, and the school your child attends, because this is a pretty specific case, so I can just address it and let her know, reach out to her separately and let her know who to contact and what the protocol is. Another bit of information, our MCPS website in general was just updated. So during spring break, and at the top left-hand corner is a language bar. And in that language bar, you can click it and you can select one of 7 different languages, and the entire website will appear in that language, which is really nice. About time.
Okay, so
I have a suggestion that is also, in addition to what Patricia's saying, but I think what I would do, first of all, you have, just like this, why I wanted you to talk about CCAC, because
yes,
there is a place where before things escalate, you can go and present your worries.
Yes.
If nobody's doing it on the steps like the school, or go up and up and up, don't skip anybody, but go and also go to CCAC and tell the director of special education, what are you worried about? And they will follow up from there.
Right. And I will do the
other
same.
thing, there's another.
and I'm
What's the name of the person that does that? Now
well,
that has
I'm a co-chair of CCAP,
right.
so
Yeah.
I can help facilitate that. It's Kia Middleton.
Middleton Murphy.
is-
And she
yeah.
actually was here this evening.
Yeah,
She was
she
here
was.
for
I
her
saw her pop
presentation.
on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
She
it was somebody else that was here too, that the office now that has all kinds of resources. And when you don't know who to call, you go and talk to her. What's her name? She came
Mary
from-
Beth Matsuranis. Mary
that's
Beth
right.
Matsuranis. Yeah.
Right.
Family Resource Center.
Oh,
Yes.
I can't even begin to
Yeah.
spell her name on here.
Right.
But
So, but
that
Miss,
office is great because
Yeah, right.
it didn't exist with that name when my son was growing up, but it helps you brainstorm, think about it, and try to think about things what to do. So
Right.
use everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the name of the school, that would give me an indication who to contact. Ms. Alvarado.
I thought she said it was Bridges program in Gaithersburg.
oh, I
Gaithers-
missed that. Okay.
Gaithersburg High School Bridge.
Gaithersburg, la
Got it.
Gaithersburg High
Okay.
School.
Okay. All right. I will reach out to the area supervisor, special education supervisor, and ask her to contact you tomorrow. Okay.
And Miss
That's
Alvarado, I'm assuming that if she reaches out to you, you'll need Spanish interpretation.
I will tell her
Okay.
Spanish
Perfect.
interpretation. Yeah.
And I can't
Okay.
remember if it's the same supervisor as mine, but she may be. If it is, she's bilingual.
I don't know. Yeah.
I
I don't know.
can't remember who it
I don't
is.
know who it is.
I don't know. Okay.
You showed the list a few, no.
Well,
It's okay. I'll reach out to her tomorrow. It's okay.
Myra, did you understand what we were all suggesting? Are you getting that translated?
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm actually in a meeting with all of them tomorrow morning, so I'll make sure I speak with her directly.
Well, it's
Don't
8:30.
stop trying. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, Ms. Alvarado, and thank you, Melissa and Pat, for this wonderful presentation. It was a lot of information, and I really am grateful for the time that you took to speak to our group this evening. And I have some even notes here to contact you just about
Great.
general, not for
Yeah.
my child, but DSNMC stuff. So this is
Yeah.
great.
I'd love to come back. So
Yes, well,
just let us know.
loved having
Yeah.
you. So
Great.
thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you. Thank
All
you
right,
so
good night.
much.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.